you're the one that has to live there. My whole job is to ensure that you're liking the direction that we're going in. And then I tell them, part of the honesty is if you don't understand something, don't just yes a floor plan to death if you don't understand it.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by architect Steve Baczek.
Good morning, everybody.
And producer Jeff Rose.
Hey.
Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find the Home Building and the Pro Talk podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can also leave feedback and ask questions there too. Steve, it is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Always a pleasure to join you guys. Hopefully you guys are doing well.
How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. I was just chatting with Jeff kind of off the air. For me, business is pretty much as usual. No projects have really canceled that haven't been victim of, say, the building department saying that we can't start it, or homeowners just saying we're not going to do that remodeling job. But as far as for me, those projects are already out the door. We're just waiting on construction, and the stuff I have on the table, people we're continuing with. It's business as usual. So pretty good stuff.
Excepting, as I understand it, your daughter is in Italy, right? And I bet that's been a scary thing.
Yeah, my oldest daughter's in Italy, and the scary part is she moved there right after the new year, and she was pregnant. So she's been at ground zero in Italy, and she just had the baby about a week and a half ago. Nice little 10-pound, 3-ounce bouncing baby boy. Happy to be alive. Happy to eat dinner. He doesn't like to miss a meal.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Can you please send us a photograph of your new grandson so we can put it up on the podcast page, please?
Yeah, certainly. I'll make sure I email it. And I call him Cranky Frankie. His name's Austin, but every time I see him, he's got a real cranky face on him, like he's waiting to be fed. So.
What took your daughter to Italy?
She's married, and her husband serves our great nation in the Army. So,
very good. So you mentioned it briefly, but
and
you said
hey, actually, let me give a big shout out to Sergeant Eric. He's he listens to all my stuff. He's very religious about watching videos and listening to all the podcasts. So he'll definitely tune in here. But a big shout out to Eric and saying thank you.
What does Eric do for the Army?
He is in the infantry, special forces, airborne kind of thing. So
very cool. Well, my best wishes to them and your new grandson.
Thank you.
So you mentioned it that your architectural practice has been largely unaffected, but you did mention that some things have gotten held up. And are there any other reasons besides code enforcement's unwillingness to inspect and homeowners getting cold feet because of the sketchy economy?
No, and it wasn't so much the homeowners were sketchy feet. We have a bunch of very large additions, remodeling projects that, finances, everything's in place. Homeowners aren't necessarily worried about that. They're more worried about having the 15 guys traipsing through their house while they're trying to live in the other half. So that's a little problem there. And I did have a couple proposals out there that, in talking with the people, they just said, Steve, we're in, but give us a couple weeks to just see where all this lands. So
sure. I've heard of a lot of contractors with similar experiences, as you might imagine.
Yeah. And I don't know how much you follow. I posted a pic the other day, but the builder, you guys know Jim down at Shoreline Builders down on the South Shore. To keep one of his projects going, he actually built a set of temporary stairs on the outside of the house. We're doing a remodeling job up in the master bath and master closet area, redoing that for a house. And the building inspector said he won't go through the house. So Jim said, hey, if I build you a stair, will you climb through the window and just go into the construction site? And he said, sure. So
that's really cool. There are good reasons for doing that generally, so you aren't going through people's houses, right? If you can.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think you've been our most regular guest on the podcast, and I've heard you say, you as a builder, you have to tell your client, or as a designer, you have to tell your client that I'm the expert, and you have to convince them to listen to you, right? What I've heard you say is, you're the expert, be the expert. What happens when you have a client who's just not getting it, just not listening to what someone is telling them who has greater expertise than they do, or than they think they do?
Yeah, it is a challenge, and I'm just going to go back to a really quick story that where it actually turned a corner, because I don't know, I've been doing this, I don't know, close to 30 years, and it probably wasn't. It was probably about halfway through that 30 years where I realized you have to let me do my job to be able to do my job. And up until then, I thought of it more as a not so much as a coaching position, but maybe just like I'm the captain of the football team and you're on the football team, and I'll give a little advice, but then we'll do things together. And it's really hard, as things go on. But more importantly, what's really interesting to me is, as my career goes on, you get the ability to have, I won't say better clients, but a different category of clients, let's say. So they might be a little bit more financially, what you call it?
Secure?
Secure. Yeah. Good line. Exactly. But more importantly, they are probably have really good status in their jobs. So the one that turned the corner was, the gentleman was the CEO for a worldwide financial institution, and you probably don't get much better than him in the financial world. And he was extremely smart. And this wasn't his personal house; it was a property that he owned that we were renovating, and for his sister-in-law actually. But he owned it, so he was running the job. But the initially, for maybe about the first month, he would ask some questions, and I'd play along, we'd answer it, and then he made a point on something that I just totally didn't agree with, and I said, I can't agree with that. I think you're wrong. And he said, what do you mean? And I explained it, and he goes, okay, I see your point. But that was a real turning point in the project, because right after that, all of a sudden, people would say, hey, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? He goes, well, I think we should do this, but let's get Steve's opinion. And because that table turned, then it hit me. I said, the reason this guy is in the position he's in is because he puts successful people in positions to do things for him, and then he doesn't necessarily have to look over their shoulders. He gets the right person and then just trusts them to do their job. And so I walked away from that job with a huge education, and saying, now I simply say, people come to me and say, oh, can you help my architect? And can you draw these details? Or can you work with us to get a better wall section, or this or that? And my simple line is, if I get on the bus, I'm driving it. And if you don't let me sit in the driver's seat, then I'm not getting on the bus.
Was it scary standing up to that guy?
In some ways it was, but he was, and I never asked him, but I don't know if he was kind of testing me to see, or if he just really believed what he was believing and I showed him a different light. But, I do tell people, this is the kind of guy that he really wasn't had much experience with people telling him no. And it's not that he was, afraid of it, because he certainly wasn't. He was extremely professional about it. It's just, he's in the business where when he says something, people run down the hall, get it, and deliver it immediately. And that's, where the world he came from. So for someone to stand up and say no, it I wouldn't say it blindsided him by any means, but it just, he took note immediately and said, okay, well, what do you have to say? And he was, when I look back at it, it's like, this is probably one of the most successful people I've ever met. And he was probably the best listener that I've ever met. So there's definitely success in giving those around you the opportunity to speak.
Do you find that there are different tactics to get different types of people to hear what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely. It probably takes me a good meeting or two to understand what kind of category of client that I have, because there are some that have absolutely no idea, that just they're sheep. Hey, Steve, whatever you say, man, just yeah. And then, I have one now. She's, I tease her because they probably are the best clients I've ever had. And I just tease her that I'm always conceding to her whimsical ideas. And she's like, "You're not conceding." And she just likes to tease me. And I said, "Okay, here we go." I said, "You almost had favorite client status, but you just lost it." And she gets all huffy. So it's fun though, but it's a great relationship. And even they're extremely good listeners, and the project is coming out exceptionally well. Probably one of the best projects I will have ever done to date. And I chalk it up to, they shut their mouth and listen. And not that they have to, but it's, you know, years ago, I worked with some very professional people in the military. And one of them told me, he said, the first rule of success is be there. And when I said, "Well, where's there?" He said, "Where there is, you just need to be there and have the discipline to be there." The second is, the second rule of success in his book was shut up and listen, because the reason you're there is chances you'll probably learn something if you don't run your mouth and open your ears. And he was a pretty grounded guy, but one of the most successful guys in the military at the time. And so that always stuck with me.
Can you explain your design process? We've talked a lot about your business, but I don't think we ever have. Like, do you sketch? Do you use computer software? Like, how do you physically draw your projects?
Yeah, so I do a little bit both, but I think it's important. Let's just jump back again, because I can make a really good transition from the last question to this question. So when I meet clients, I actually give them homework. So they sign on, send a retainer check, and then I send them an email that's like 6 bullet points of homework. And the homework starts out with, write a couple page narrative of what do you think a successful house is, or successful family. It depends on what we're doing. But write a narrative. And I tell them, I don't want like I want a 20 by 20 family room, or because my sister's is 18-foot square, and I think it needs to be a little bigger kind of thing. You do get that, but it's more about, are you looking to have a family room that you can throw Super Bowl parties in and have 30 people because you entertain a lot? Or are you looking for a place where you and your husband kind of sink down into the sofa on a Friday night, watch a good movie? Because those are kind of two different spaces. And the same goes for kitchens. Are you a gourmet cook? Or I've had clients in their narrative say, "Steve, the closest we come to cooking is firing up the microwave. So our kitchen doesn't have to be that elaborate." But that does a number of things by making them do this homework. And they have to supply photos and this and that. And then I jokingly tell the husband that he has to do it independently of his wife, and he can't show her until after they send it to me. So I tell him this is his one opportunity to actually have an opinion. So they always like that. But
Well, are they often on the same page, or do they often have different ideas about stuff? And does it vary?
So I think for the most part, they're on the same page. Where the fork in the road is where they place value, right? So like this last project, the husband absolutely wanted a whole house radiant floor. There was no way I was talking him out of this. He would do nothing for the renovation project except put a radiant floor in, if that's what it came down to. And her dream was to have this living room where this is the one where we're doing a barrel vaulted coffered ceiling. And she just had this dream of having that with this big fireplace and bookcases, and kind of like a library stuff, but a contemporary tilt feel to it. So that's usually where they vary. For the most part, they're on the same page. Usually they place values in different things. And sometimes it's the wife wants a bathtub, and sometimes the husband's a good cook, or he wants a big deck, or big, I want the 3-car garage, my wife can have the master bathroom she wants. So all of that. But that process really helps me out to get, that's that first understanding of what kind of clients am I dealing with here. Is this narrative all about bigger is better and keeping up with the Joneses, or is there some truth and validity to, we just want these nice spaces for us personally, kind of. How are they approaching that? So it's really good in that sense, as well as it gives me something to go back on. So now I go away if I'm doing a new house, and I'll come back at them with maybe 3 or 4 floor plans sketched out. And
Drawn with pen and paper? I mean,
yeah,
like physically
I mean,
sketched?
sometimes I'll do it on AutoCAD. I mean, it doesn't really take that long to whip it up, and then sometimes it's a little bit of both. I'll do a bunch of major lines and walls in AutoCAD and print it out, and then kind of fill in doors, windows, furniture, and stuff by hand. So you get the sketchy feel, but the reality is one of those 3 plans they're probably going to pick. So now I already have a base for the CAD file, so that now I can start dressing that up. So it's nothing's really ever getting wasted, except, I mean, the other couple floor plans are, but that's, part of the first 2 meetings. No's are just as important as yeses.
Do you find that your clients understand floor plans thinking 2-dimensionally, or do you have to do 3D renderings for them to get it?
Yeah, so a little bit of both, but I really stress when I have that first meeting with them, where we have a quick meeting where we review homework, and so not only do they get the homework, but then I stress the ground rules for our cooperation throughout the future, and I basically tell them, I said, listen, here's the 3 rules to answering a question when I ask it. You need to be confident, or I mean, sorry, you need to be honest, then you need to be confident, and then you need to be expedient. And you need to be in that order. So don't answer the question unless you can absolutely assure me you're not going to second guess that question. And you're being honest. Don't get to the second or third design meeting and say, yeah, I don't really like the kitchen sink over there or the way this kitchen is laid out. And I say, why? Well, I thought you liked it because you were all excited about it. It's like, I tell them right up front, I don't really give a damn what your decisions are. They're your decisions. I'm the coach. I'm helping you, put it in alignment with some good thoughts and utility and aesthetics, but you're the one that has to live there. My whole job is to ensure that you're liking the direction that we're going in. And then I tell them, part of the honesty is if you don't understand something, don't just yes a floor plan to death if you don't understand it. I can go back to my office, whip up a quick sketch or SketchUp model of what I'm thinking for that fireplace, bookshelves, etc., patio door or whatever, or that back deck or front elevation, whatever it is, to bring you up to speed. My job is to ensure that when you sign the construction contract, you understand what you're getting. So,
and then after you've agreed with your client on what you're going to build, are there further renderings or further iterations for the build process, or are you pretty well there by that point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of it. Every project's a little different, and the reason they're a little different is how they originate decides kind of the final avenue. Meaning, I do a lot of projects with builders that I've done tons of projects with before. That hey Steve, we have this client, they want a family room, new kitchen renovation, and we're doing a master suite above. Okay, we're doing that. Well, I know this builder. This builder knows me, so we have certain routes that we go. This one particular builder, he has a cabinet maker that we use all the time. So, that cabinet maker doesn't necessarily need that much in detail. I can give them the rough layout and say, hey, sink's going here, dishwasher, appliances, and then, the trash bin, here's our initial conversation. He can run with it. But then there's the other client that, we're going to a different cabinet maker or somebody I haven't worked with before, or it's just that the lines of these cabinets need to tie in very in a synchronized way to a lot of other things that are happening in the kitchen and stuff. So they just require a lot more drawing because that coordination effort is higher. So it's, and Jim down at Shoreline, he'll do things like, hey, don't worry about, doing that. We'll build a mock-up of the island out of plywood. And then people can see that in the space when we get it framed up. So it varies. It varies. But at working with all these guys, I need to understand, the expectations of what they typically do, and then kind of coordinate my efforts with that.
So do you have any staffers in your practice? Are you a one man show? How does that work?
So I'm a one man show right now, but my daughter is got maybe about 4 weeks left of her master's degree in architecture, and then she'll start working with me. That's
How
my
is it
second daughter.
to manage a business solely by yourself?
So I love it because the thing about it is that I love the most is it's a sink or swim proposition, right? It's like golf, right? Golf, being a good golfer being versus being a quarterback, right? You could say, "Oh my God, he's the best quarterback ever that played on this team." Well, is that because he was a really good quarterback, or the receivers he had on the team, or the line? So there's a lot of supporting cast that allow him to do that. Whereas the golfer, you can't sit there. I mean, I guess on a professional level, you can say he's got a good caddy or whatever with a good eye, but the reality is the golfer or swimmer is another one, right? The swimmer, they dive into the pool, and it's all them. You either sink or swim. You win the race, or you come in second, or you come in eighth. But it's on you. You can't sit there and say, "Well, this guy, didn't do this." So, being a sole guy, it's that. So I can sit back and say, "Okay, yeah, I did that," and I don't have to kind of weed it any to understand, was it these decisions or that. It was all the decisions. Now, just like the quarterback, you can certainly make the argument. I have the opportunity to, and the privilege actually, to work with some exceptional builders that I think that's huge in making the architect, their projects come to life and look good. And I mean, I'm doing a project right now, and the guy in charge has his framers. It's like furniture quality framing. I've never seen this before. But I go up there and I'm like, "Guys, maybe we don't drywall. Maybe we just stain the studded wall and call it a day." But
I'm always disappointed when the frame gets covered with drywall, because and to my eye, that's the most beautiful part. And then no one ever sees it after the drywall crew has come through.
yeah, and it's funny because I climbed up on the roof the other day, and the guy that owns the framing crew is like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm just coming up here to see what you're doing." He's like, "Oh, all right." And I was like, "Man, you guys are doing a good job." He goes, "Nobody ever cares about the framers." And I go, "I do. I just climbed up on the roof to see what you were doing and have a chat with you." He goes, "Yeah, I guess you're right."
That's awesome.
So
So what do you expect that your second daughter is going to be doing? Is she going to join the practice? Does she want to join the practice?
yeah, she's gonna join, and my son is also in architecture school. He's just in his second of 5 years. So I need to take the next 3 years, get her up to speed, so that when he graduates, then I can put him on her, and we can continue to roll. So, but yeah, she's going to join, and the beauty is that at 30 years in my career, I have the opportunity to get some really good jobs, but I also have, this long loyalty status with a handful of builders and some of them still get, "Hey, Steve, I don't want to bother you, but I need drawings for this 2-car garage with a little granny flat upstairs. I know that sucks, but can you help me out?" I'm, "Sure, sure." I told you from day one when we became a team that I'm here to do what you need,
Hmm.
whether it's a 2-car garage or a 4,000 square foot house. We do it together.
Do you
And
guys debate architecture at family gatherings? Like, do you talk about projects and bad architects and bad architecture?
so we have some minor conversations, but actually, what the sink or swim proposition, one of the things I commend my daughter on is she's finishing up 6.5 years of architecture school. I've never been to one of her pinups. Um, I can only say that I've seen pictures or photos of final projects, and it's not that she doesn't want me to see it or we don't associate. It's that she wants this to be hers. She wants to graduate and say, "I did that, and my dad didn't do it." Now, does that mean that occasionally I don't get a detail? Dad, we're doing concrete class and I'm trying to figure out this. How do you do this joint, or what's happening here? Or in my design project, I want to do this. How thick should I think about this, or whatever those questions are. And I'll throw her a little bone here and there, but it's certainly nothing that provides her any direction. And the thing is she's doing exceptionally well. She's at the top of her class and making me very proud. All three of my kids make me proud, but she's doing really well, and it's all her.
Where's she going to school?
She goes to Roger Williams, and my son goes to Auburn.
Cool. So I observed that most architects, designers have a geographic limitation. That means to say that they're in this city or this town and they serve this clientele in this town or this city. You don't seem to have these geographic limitations. You design houses all over the country. Am I right in that?
Yeah. I
get
calls all over. So I think of it as there is a certain demographic. It's not geographic, but I'd call it the fun circle. If you're a fun builder to work with and you're a good client and I'm going to have some fun doing this project with you, then I'm all in. I'll fly to Texas. I'll fly to Colorado, or I'm talking to a gentleman right now about 6 houses out in California. And but yeah, I'm all in if you're the right client. And
how do you pre-qualify?
You can get a feel for it. In some of it, like I just signed on a client out in Colorado, and the builder out there, Rangeline Homes, I've known him for a while. He's a really cool guy. And but he's like, Steve, I have this really good client, and they've been watching videos and stuff. They'd really want to work with us. And I was like, yeah, all right, sign me up. If you say they're cool, then I trust it. And he's a really good builder that's on top of things. So I'm as excited to work with him as I am the clients.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. But tune in next week when we'll have the second half of my conversation with architect Steve Baczek. Thanks to Steve Baczek for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you for listening. Happy building.